The sun was setting over the alien city, casting long shadows across the sparkling structures. The city of Zorith was known for its incredible beauty and advanced technology. Tall buildings reached toward the sky, their shining surfaces reflecting the orange and purple hues of the evening sky. The streets were busy, filled with different species from across the galaxy, all gathered for a grand celebration. The air was filled with laughter and music as people danced, shared stories, and enjoyed the festivities. Among the crowd stood Lyra, a young alien girl from the distant planet Rylos. She was curious about the humans who had arrived on this planet. For the first time, she had heard stories about them, but she had never met one in person. Today, she was about to witness something she would never forget. Lyra was attending this celebration with some friends, but her attention kept drifting toward the large pool in the center of the gathering. The pool was a beautiful sight, its water sparkling under the light of the setting sun. Few children were swimming, and adults stood around the edges, chatting and watching the playful splashes. Lyra was fascinated by the water. Her species wasn't used to swimming. The gravity on Rylos was much higher than it was on this planet, and she wasn't as comfortable in water as others seemed to be. Still, she found herself walking closer to the pool, drawn by its calming appearance. She stood at the edge for a moment, watching the others. She felt a sense of wonder, but also a hint of fear. What if she fell in? What if she couldn't swim? Before she could think more about it, something happened. Lyra took a step back, but her foot slipped on the smooth stone edge of the pool. She tried to catch herself, but the slip was too fast. Her body lost balance, and in the blink of an eye, she was falling backward into the deep water. The pool's surface rippled as she splashed in, her body sinking quickly beneath the surface. The water, much colder than she had expected, filled her lungs as she gasped for air. Her arms flailed, but she couldn't find the strength to push herself back up. Panic set in as the water closed over her head, and she realized just how deep the pool was. Her heart raced as she struggled to stay afloat. From the edge of the pool, the crowd gasped. They had seen her fall, but no one moved to help. The alien bystanders seemed unsure of what to do. Many of them had never been in such a situation, and they weren't used to acting quickly in emergencies. Shit. A few people pointed and muttered to each other, but no one made an effort to dive in and help. It was then that Ryan, a human diplomat visiting Zorith on a peace mission, noticed the girl. He had been standing at the edge of the celebration, quietly observing the other species and taking in the sights of this strange new world. Humans had never been a common sight in this part of the galaxy, so Ryan was a curiosity to many. He was tall and strong, but he wasn't here for the festivities. He was here on official business. Still, when his eyes locked on Lyra as she struggled in the water, something inside him shifted. Ryan had been trained for all kinds of situations. He had seen danger before, but seeing a helpless girl drowning was something different. Without a second thought, he pushed his way through the crowd, his heart pounding. He could hear people murmuring around him, but he didn't pay attention to them. His focus was on one thing: saving her. He reached the pool's edge just as Lyra's head dipped below the surface again. Without hesitating, Ryan dove into the water. The cold hit him like a shock, but he didn't mind. His body moved instinctively, his hands cutting through the water as he swam toward the sinking girl. Ryan reached Lyra just in time. She was barely conscious, her body limp as he wrapped his arms around her. He could feel her shallow breathing and knew he had to act fast. With every ounce of strength, he pulled her up to the surface. Fighting against the weight of the water that threatened to drag them both down, he kicked hard, pushing himself toward the pool's edge, his muscles straining with effort. The crowd watched in silence now, realizing what was happening. As Ryan reached the side of the pool, he used the last of his strength to lift both himself and Lyra out of the water. His legs trembled as he struggled to stand, but he finally made it, collapsing onto the cool stone edge. Lyra coughed and gasped for air, her chest rising and falling as she tried to catch her breath. Her eyes fluttered open, and she blinked. Confused at first, the sounds of the crowd around her seemed distant, as if she were hearing them from far away. Slowly, her gaze focused, and she saw the human who had saved her. He was kneeling beside her, his face filled with concern. Ryan smiled at her, relief flooding through him as she seemed to regain consciousness. "Are you okay?" he asked, though. He wasn't sure if she understood him. His voice was gentle, calm, as if he wanted a lot out of him. His eyes were kind, filled with concern as he glanced over at her every now and then. Lyra wanted to say something, to thank him, but the words didn't come. She wasn't sure how to express the depth of her gratitude. Humans were so different from the beings she had known back on Rylos. Their world was far away, and in her home no one would have jumped into the water to save someone. Their culture was different, their ways were different, but here, on this strange planet, this human had risked his life without a second thought. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked, his voice soft and full of care. Lyra finally looked at him, her violet eyes meeting his, trying to find the words to respond. She didn't understand everything he said, but she could tell he was concerned. His tone was gentle, and his posture was open, as if he truly cared. About her well-being, she smiled a little, not knowing how to answer, but her eyes spoke what her mouth couldn't. "Fine," Lyra said, the words awkward on her tongue. She was still learning the common language of the galaxy, and the words felt strange in her mouth. She paused, trying again. "Thank you." Her voice was shaky, but the gratitude in her eyes was clear. Ryan smiled, nodding his head. "No problem. I'm just glad I got to you in time." He looked at the others in the crowd, many of whom were still watching them, some whispering to each other in disbelief. The alien crowd had been stunned into silence by the act, and Ryan couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable under the weight of their stares. A few of the bystanders approached them, offering kind words in their own languages. They didn't know how to thank Ryan either, but they tried to express their appreciation in the best way they could. One alien woman with shimmering blue skin placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "You saved her life," she said in a warm, melodic voice that is something few would do. Ryan nodded, though he felt a bit embarrassed. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight. He had only acted out of instinct, and he didn't want to be praised for something that anyone else might have done. As the crowd began to disperse, Lyra felt a tug at her heart. She was still recovering, but something about this human, this kind human, made her feel safe. She had always been told that humans were dangerous, that their kind was violent and unpredictable. But now, seeing him so calm and kind, she wasn't sure what to think anymore. Ryan stood up, stretching his arms and looking at Lyra with a smile. "You should be okay now, but if you need anything, just let me know," he said. "I can help you get back to where you're staying." Lyra nodded, unsure of how to respond. She didn't want to go back yet. There was something about Ryan that made her want to stay. She didn't want to leave just yet, not while he was still there. "Double quotes, where ... are you from?" she asked slowly, her voice hesitant but curious. Ryan raised an eyebrow, surprised by the question. "I'm from Earth. It's pretty far from here. A lot of people don't know much about us, to be honest." Lyra blinked, processing the information. Earth was far. She had heard of it, but never met anyone from there. She wondered what his planet was like. "Is it like here?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. Ryan chuckled softly. "No, not at all. Earth's a bit different. It's a lot more ... wild, I guess." He scratched the back of his head. "But it's home, and we take care of our own." Lyra thought about his words. She had never known a human before, but she was beginning to realize that not everything she had been told about them was true. They weren't all violent or aggressive. Maybe, just maybe, humans could be kind too. As she sat there, still processing the events, she could feel her heart racing, not from fear, but from something else. Something new. She wasn't sure what it was, but it was a feeling she had never experienced before. Ryan looked at her, his expression softening. "I know this might sound strange, but if you want, I can show you around. The planet, I mean. Here for a while, and I know some places you might enjoy." Lyra hesitated. She was still unsure about the idea of spending more time with him. Her people had always been cautious about getting too close to outsiders, especially humans. But something about Ryan made her feel different. He wasn't like the others. She trusted him. Okay, Lyra said finally, her voice quieter but filled with sincerity. I would like that. Ryan smiled, and for a moment, it was just the two of them, the crowd of aliens fading into the background. It was a simple gesture, an offer of friendship, but it meant more to Lyra than she could express. As the two of them walked away from the pool together, Lyra felt so... Mething knew something that didn't feel like fear or uncertainty. It was hope, and for the first time she believed that maybe not all humans were dangerous. Maybe, just maybe, they could be trusted. Ryan and Lyra walked through the alien city, the strange buildings towering above them. The streets were alive with color and sound, filled with beings from all over the galaxy. Ryan felt like an outsider in this place, but Lyra made him feel less alone. She walked beside him, her eyes wide with curiosity as she looked at everything around her. She had grown up in a completely different world, one that didn't look anything like this city. And yet here she was, walking alongside a humana. Species she had been taught to view as dangerous. As they strolled, Lyra couldn't help but notice how calm Ryan was. He didn't seem worried about the strange surroundings or the many curious glances from the other aliens. To her, it felt like he belonged, even though he was from another world. She admired that about him, even if she couldn't fully understand. Is this your first time on this planet? Lyra asked, breaking the silence between them. Her voice was soft, but her words were filled with curiosity. She had so many questions about humans and their ways, but she didn't want to overwhelm him. Ryan glanced at her, a small smile on his face. Yeah, it is. I've been here for a couple of weeks now, just getting to know the place. I've seen a lot of alien worlds, but this one's special. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Special? She asked, her interest piqued. How? Ryan thought for a moment before answering. It's the people here. They're a little different from what I've seen before, but they've got something about them, you know? I've learned a lot already just from talking to a few of them. Lyra smiled, nodding slightly. I think I understand. There's always something interesting about meeting someone from another world. But you know, sometimes the differences can make things ... difficult. Ryan nodded, agreeing. I get that, but I think that's what makes it all worth it. Eukaryon chuckled. You can take it if you want. No one's going to stop you. Lyra's eyes widened. I couldn't, she said, stepping back. It's not mine. I wouldn't take something. That doesn't belong to me. Ryan shrugged. It's a gift then. Okay. A token of thanks for the save earlier. He reached out and picked up the crystal, holding it out to her. Go ahead, take it. Lyra hesitated, but something in Ryan's eyes made her trust him. Slowly, she reached out and accepted the crystal, holding it gently in her hands.
Thank
you, she whispered, her voice quiet but sincere. Anytime, Ryan replied, his tone warm. I told you I've got your back. As they continued their walk, Lyra couldn't help but feel a warmth growing in her chest. She had never met anyone like Ryan before. Most aliens she had encountered were distant and cautious, but Ryan was different. He didn't judge her for being an alien, simply saw her as someone worth helping. The two of them spent the rest of the afternoon together, walking through the city, talking about their homes and their lives. Lyra told Ryan about Rylos, her home planet, and its lush forests and towering mountains. She spoke about the people there, the customs, and the way her species lived in harmony with nature. Ryan listened intently, fascinated by her stories. In turn, Ryan shared stories from Earth. He told her about his life growing up, the challenges his people faced, and the ways they overcame them. He explained how humans had learned to adapt, how they had struggled to make a place for themselves. In the galaxy, Lyra was surprised by how similar their experiences seemed. Despite the vast differences between their worlds, she had always believed that humans were unpredictable, dangerous creatures. But now, listening to Ryan, she saw something different. She saw a being who, like her, had to struggle, adapt, and learn in order to survive. She saw a human who cared, who understood the value of life, no matter the species. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the city, Lyra and Ryan found a quiet spot near a park. They sat together on a bench, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the sky. The city around them was bustling, but in this moment, everything felt calm. Lyra looked up at Ryan, her heart full of unspoken words. She felt a connection with him, a bond that was hard to explain. She had never believed in friendship with someone from another world, but Ryan had shown her that it was possible. Maybe humans weren't so different after all. "Thank you," Lyra said again, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan smiled, his gaze meeting hers. "You don't need to thank me, Lyra. We're friends, remember?" Lyra nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Yes," she agreed softly. "We are." As the night fell over the city, Lyra and Ryan sat in comfortable silence, the stars shining down on them. For the first time in a long time, Lyra felt hopeful. The universe was vast, and there was still so much she didn't understand. Maybe, just maybe, she could trust the humans after all. The days that followed the rescue felt different to Lyra. She had always been cautious around other species, especially humans. But after her encounter with Ryan, she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of trust. He had saved her life without hesitation, and since then, he had treated her with kindness and respect. It was more than she had ever expected from a human. Lyra spent more time with Ryan, walking through the city, talking, and learning about Earth and its people. The more she learned, the more she felt connected to him. Ryan, in turn, seemed to enjoy their time together. He had always felt like an outsider in this galaxy, but with Lyra, he didn't feel so alone. One evening, as they sat by the city's edge, watching the stars, Ryan turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "I've been invited to a gathering tomorrow," Ryan said, his voice hesitant. "It's with some important figures, here leaders of different species. They want to discuss the future of the galaxy and how humans might fit into it, but I don't know if I should go. It could get complicated." Lyra looked at him, her curiosity piqued. "Why do you say it's complicated?" she asked, her voice soft. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his wet hair. "Because, well, humans aren't exactly well-liked in some parts of the galaxy. Some of the leaders think we're too dangerous, too unpredictable. They might want to test us to see if we really are a threat." Lyra frowned, her heart sinking. At the thought, she'd heard similar things about humans' rumors, about their violence and unpredictability. But Ryan didn't seem dangerous at all. He was kind and gentle. She couldn't understand why anyone would see him as a threat. "What if they do something ... bad?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with concern. "What if they try to hurt you?" Ryan looked at her, his eyes filled with reassurance. "I don't think they will, but it's still risky. I don't want to get caught up in something I don't understand." Lyra thought for a moment, her mind racing. Let Ryan go alone. He might be walking into danger. But if she went with him, maybe she could help him understand the situation better. Maybe they could face it together. She had always been taught to stay out of conflicts, to avoid confrontation. But for the first time, she felt a strong urge to act to protect someone who had protected her. "I'll go with you," Lyra said. Suddenly surprising herself with her own words, Ryan turned to her, his eyebrows raised in surprise. "You don't have to do that. It could get dangerous." Lyra's eyes locked with his, and she felt a surge of determination. "I want to help you. You saved me, Ryan. Now I want to be there for you." Ryan looked at her for a long moment, considering her words. He had never expected her to offer her help like this, but something about her made him believe she could handle herself in any situation. "You're sure?" he asked gently. Lyra nodded, her expression firm. "Yes, I'm sure." The next day, Ryan and Lyra arrived at the gathering, which was held in a large, impressive building at the center of the city. The building was made of smooth, gleaming metal, with walls that seemed to shift colors as the light changed. It was a symbol of the power and influence the leaders inside held. They were greeted by a group of aliens, some of whom Ryan had already met. They were curious about the human who had saved Lyra, and there was a mix of respect and suspicion in their eyes. The atmosphere was tense, with many of them eyeing Ryan warily. Lyra stayed close to him, her presence comforting but also adding to the tension. She knew that some of these aliens were wary of humans, and her own race was not widely accepted in some parts of the galaxy. Yet, she didn't backdoor many who believe that your kind is a danger to us all. Ryan stood his ground, not backing down under the leader's gaze. "I'm not here to fight or cause trouble," he said calmly. "I'm here to make peace, to show that humans can work with you, not against you." Lyra glanced at him, admiring his strength. Despite the pressure, Ryan remained calm and composed. She had no doubt that he would stand his ground and prove himself. The alien leader didn't seem convinced, his eyes narrowing. "We will see," he said cryptically. "The galaxy is not so forgiving, and humans are not always welcome here." The conversation turned into a series of questions and challenges, each alien leader taking th. I turned to test Ryan's resolve. Lyra stood quietly beside him, offering a steady presence, but she could see that Ryan was becoming weary. The constant questioning, the distrust in their eyes, it was starting to wear on him, just as the atmosphere was becoming more intense. Lyra spoke up, her voice strong and clear. "Why don't you ask us what we can offer, instead of what we might take?" she said. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Humans and aliens can work together. We can share knowledge, we can build a future. But if you only see us as threats, we'll never get anywhere. The room fell silent again. The alien leaders exchanged glances, and for a moment Lyra wondered if she had gone too far. Then the leader with the stone-like skin spoke once more, his voice softer than before. "You have a point," he said. "Perhaps there is more to humans than we have seen. We will consider your words." Lyra and Ryan exchanged a glance. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a step forward. As they left the meeting room, Lyra felt a sense of pride. She had spoken out, and maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. Ryan looked at her and smiled, grateful for her support. "Thanks for being here with me," he said. "I couldn't have done it without you." Lyra smiled back, her heart full. "We're in this together." The next few days were filled with uncertainty. After the meeting with the galaxy's leaders, Ryan and Lyra found themselves caught in a web of political games and shifting allegiances. There were whispers in the hallways of the Alien Council building. Some believed Ryan's presence was a threat to their power, while others began to wonder if humans could be trusted after all. The question of how humans fit into the galaxy's future had not been resolved. Ryan and Lyra had spent most of their time together, quietly observing the alien city and learning more about each other. The bond between them had grown stronger. They shared their hopes and fears, and it was clear to both of them that they had become more than just allies. They had become friends. But as the days passed, it became evident that things were not as simple as they seemed. The leaders of the galaxy had invited Ryan to their planet for a reason, and they were beginning to test him. They had seen his bravery when he saved Lyra, but now they wanted to know just how far his loyalty to his own people went. One evening, as Ryan and Lyra sat on a balcony overlooking the city, a messenger arrived, carrying an official-looking document. The messenger handed it to Ryan, his expression unreadable. "What's this?" Ryan asked, his fingers brushing over the seal. The messenger didn't answer, simply bowed and left, vanishing into the crowd. Ryan broke the seal and read the document carefully. His face darkened as he finished reading. Lyra leaned over, her curiosity getting the better of her. "What does it say?" Ryan folded the paper and set it down, his expression conflicted. "The council wants to test me. They've given me a mission one that could prove whether or not humans are truly trustworthy." Lyra felt a knot form in her stomach. "What kind of test?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Ryan paused before answering. "They want me to go to a distant planet, a place where tensions are high between two warring factions. They want me to negotiate a peace treaty between them, to prove that humans can be trusted with such responsibility." Lyra looked at him in shock. "That sounds dangerous. What if you fail?" Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. But if I refuse, they might see it as a sign that humans are too weak or unwilling to engage with the galaxy's problems. This is a test of our strength, our willingness to stand up for what's right." Lyra felt a deep sense of unease. She had seen firsthand how humans were judged harshly by the galaxy's leaders. It seemed that no matter what Ryan did, he was always going to be tested. "Do you think you can do it?" she asked quietly. Ryan turned to her, his eyes serious. "I have to try. For Earth, for us." Lyra knew that there was no way she could convince him to stay behind. She had seen the determination in his eyes, the same determination that had driven him to save her life. He was willing to take risks, to put himself in danger. If it meant proving that humans could be a force for good, "I'll go with you," Lyra said suddenly, surprising both herself and Ryan. He looked at her, his brow furrowing in confusion.
What?
"You don't have to. This mission is for me, not you." Lyra shook her head, her expression firm. "I want to help. You're not alone in this. I've learned a lot from you, and if this is what it takes to prove that we can work together, then I'm in." Ryan hesitated. He knew that the mission would be dangerous. It was risky enough for one person, but two, he didn't want to put Lyra in harm's way. But then again, he couldn't deny that having her by his side would make him feel stronger. "All right," he said finally, his voice soft but determined. "We'll do it together." The next morning, Ryan and Lyra left the city, traveling toward the remote planet where the warring factions were located. The journey was long and tense, with little communication between the two of them as they prepared for the difficult task ahead. Lyra could sense the weight of the mission bearing down on Ryan. He had always been confident, but this time he was uncertain. When they arrived on the planet, they were greeted by representatives from both factions. The atmosphere was thick, with tension, and the people here were wary of outsiders. The air itself seemed charged with hostility. Ryan stood tall, trying his best to appear confident, but Lyra could see that his mind was racing. He was trying to figure out the best way to approach the situation. The two factions had been at war for years, and neither side trusted the other. They were skeptical of the humans who had arrived to mediate the peace, and they made that very clear. The leaders of each faction sat across from Ryan and Lyra, their eyes cold and calculating. "You are wasting your time, human," one of the leaders said, his voice filled with disdain. "We do not need your help. There is no peace to be made." Ryan didn't flinch. "I'm not here to tell you what you need," he said calmly. "I'm here to offer you a chance to stop the fighting, a chance to build something better." Suspicion and hostility. Both sides were entrenched in their beliefs, unwilling to trust anyone from the outside, especially humans. The situation seemed hopeless. Each day the tensions grew thicker, and Ryan could feel the weight of the mission on his shoulders. He had come here to bring peace, but it seemed like every word he said was met with resistance. He began to wonder if he was in over his head. Maybe he wasn't the right person for this job after all. But Lyra never wavered. She stayed by his side, offering support and encouragement. Her presence was a steady reminder that they were in this together. Ryan didn't realize how much he needed her until now. She had an ability to see things from different perspectives, a skill that proved invaluable during their talks. While Ryan was focused on finding practical solutions, Lyra saw the deeper emotions that motivated the faction's leaders. One afternoon, as they sat in a small room, exhausted from another failed attempt at negotiation, Lyra spoke up. "We're missing something," she said quietly, her eyes thoughtful. "We've been focusing too much on what we can offer them in terms of power and resources.
Oh.
But what if what they really need is something else?" Ryan looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Lyra leaned forward, her voice low but determined. "What if they need hope? Hope that things can be different, that peace is possible. Maybe they're not fighting because they want to, they're fighting because they don't see any other way. If we show them that peace isn't just an idea, but a reality they can reach for, maybe they'll listen." Ryan stared at her for a moment, processing her words. It was so simple, yet so profound. He had been caught up in the details. Logistics of how to stop the war, but Lyra had reminded him of something crucial. People didn't just need resources. They needed belief. Belief in something better. "You're right," Ryan said slowly, a spark of hope reigniting within him. "I've been trying to fix this like a problem that needs a solution. But maybe it's more about changing their minds, not just their circumstances." Lyra smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. Exactly. The next day, They met with the faction leaders again. Ryan and Lyra had decided to approach the situation from a different angle. Instead of focusing solely on peace talks, they began by asking the leaders what they wanted for their people, not just in terms of land or power, but in terms of hope for the future. The first leader to speak was Zolthar, the leader of the larger faction. He was a tall alien with dark, swirling patterns on his skin, his face set in a permanent scowl. He had been the most resistant to peace talks, but now something in his posture seemed different. He looked weary, as though the weight of the war had finally begun to take its toll on him. "What do we want?" Zolthar repeated Ryan's question, his voice rough. "We want peace, but not at the cost of our people's survival. We want to ensure that we are not wiped out, that we have a place in the galaxy." Ryan nodded, understanding the depth of his fear. "And what would it take for you to believe that peace is possible?" Zolthar paused, his eyes narrowing. "Trust. Trust that the other side won't betray us again. Trust that we can build something new, not just for our people, but for the galaxy." Lyra stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Trust takes time, but it begins with a single step. If you choose to work together to build something lasting, that's the first step toward trust. But you have to be willing to make it." The room was silent for a long moment as Zolthar considered her words. His eyes flickered to the other leaders, who were watching intently. They too were waiting for his response. Finally, Zolthar spoke, his voice quieter than before. "I've seen too much bloodshed. I want to believe that peace is possible." "Can you make it happen?" Ryan and Lyra exchanged a look. It wasn't the answer they had hoped for, but it was progress. Zolthar's willingness to even consider peace meant something. It meant that they weren't as far from success as they had thought. "We can help make it happen," Ryan said, his voice steady. "Right. But it's going to take both of you working together. This isn't about one side winning. It's about both sides finding a way to share this galaxy." Lyra nodded, her eyes glowing with determination. "You have to decide what kind of future you want, a future of war or a future of peace. The choice is yours." The other leaders shifted uneasily in their seats. It was clear that they had heard what they needed to hear, but the next steps would be crucial. They couldn't just stop fighting and suddenly trust one another. They needed a plan, a commitment. The path to peace wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, there was hope. Later that evening, as Ryan and Lyra walked back to their temporary quarters, Ryan felt a sense of cautious optimism. They had made a breakthrough, and it was all because they had dared to speak the truth. Peace wasn't just about signing treaties or making deals. It was about opening hearts and minds to a better future. Lyra looked up at the stars above them, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think they'll make it?" she asked quietly. Ryan glanced at her, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I don't know, but we've given them the chance. The rest is up to them." Lyra nodded, her heart full. "That's all we can do." The days that followed were tense, but filled with a quiet sense of hope. After Ryan and Lyra's conversation with the faction leaders, things began to shift. Slowly, the two sides started to open up, willing to listen to each other, albeit with caution. Ryan and Lyra knew that their work wasn't done yet, but for the first time, it felt like peace was within reach. They spent the next few days facilitating meetings between the leaders of both factions. It wasn't easy. Old wounds and suspicions ran deep, but Ryan and Lyra were determined to make it work. The leaders were still hesitant, still unsure if they could truly trust each other, but they were willing to try. The idea of a future without war was too powerful to ignore. One evening, as Ryan and Lyra walked through the city, talking quietly, Lyra paused and looked up at the stars above them. The sky was clear, and the stars shone brightly in the dark expanse. The sight was beautiful, and for a moment, she forgot about the weight of their mission. "It's hard to believe that all of this peace is even possible," Lyra said, softly, her voice filled with wonder. Ryan glanced at her, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "Yeah, it feels surreal sometimes. But the people here, they're starting to believe that peace can happen. And I think it's because we showed them that we're not here to fight, we're here to help." Lyra smiled, nodding slowly. "Glad we came here. I didn't think I'd ever feel this way. I thought humans were all about fighting. But you've shown me that there's more to your people, Ryan shrugged, his hands in his pockets. I guess we're not all the same. But when you see enough of the same thing, people fighting, people dying, you start to think there's got to be a better way. Lyra nodded again, her gaze drifting back to the stars. Maybe we've both learned that lesson the hard way. They continued walking in silence for a while, each of them lost in their thoughts. The city around them was still bustling with activity, but here, in this moment, it felt like the two of them were the only ones in the universe. They had come so far together, and now there was a chance for peace. It was something they both had longed for, something they had fought for. But neither of them could have done it alone. The next day, Ryan and Lyra were called to the council building for another meeting with the faction leaders. The atmosphere in the room was different this time. The leaders weren't as tense, their eyes less cold. There was a glimmer of hope in the air, a sense of possibility. Sholdtar. The leader of the larger faction stood at the front of the room. His stone-like skin seemed less hard now, and his usual scowl was softened. The other leaders were gathered around the table, waiting for the meeting to begin. Ryan and Lyra walked in, and for the first time, the leaders didn't look at them with suspicion. They were looking at them with respect. Zolthar spoke first, his voice deep but steady. We have thought long and hard about the words you spoke to us, human, you and Lyra. You've shown us that there is another way that doesn't require bloodshed. Ryan exchanged a look with Lyra, surprised by Zolthar's words. He hadn't expected such an open statement from him. We've agreed, Zolthar continued, that the war must end. The fighting has torn apart too many lives, and we've all paid a heavy price. It's time for us to come together, to build a future where our people can coexist peacefully. Ryan's heart leaped with joy. This was at the moment they had been working for. But Zolthar added, his gaze shifting to the other leaders. Peace is not something that happens overnight. It will take time, and it will take effort. But we're willing to try. There was a murmur of agreement from the other leaders. Lyra's eyes shone with a mixture of relief and pride. This was the moment they had fought for, the moment when everything changed. Ryan stepped forward, his voice firm but filled with gratitude. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for believing that peace is possible. Zolthar nodded. It was not just you, human. It was you and Lyra, together. You showed us that peace is not something we can wait for, it's something we must create. Lyra smiled at him, her heart full of hope. We're all in this together. Together we can make it work. The leaders discussed the next steps: how to begin the process of rebuilding, how to share resources, how to form alliances. It wasn't going to be easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but there was a plan. A plan for peace. A plan for a future without war. As the meeting came to a close, Ryan and Lyra stood together, watching as the leaders began to shake hands, a sign of their agreement. The room, which had once been filled with tension and distrust, now felt lighter. There was a sense of unity, of understanding when they stepped outside into the bright sunlight. Lyra turned to Ryan, her smile wide and genuine. We did it, she said, her voice full of wonder. Ryan grinned back at her. We did. And you know what? It feels good. Lyra laughed softly, shaking her head. It feels amazing. The two of them walked down the steps of the council building together, side by side. There was still much work to be done, but they had made the first step. And for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt that there was hope. Hope that peace could last. Hope that humans and aliens could work together. She knew deep in her heart that this was just the beginning. As they walked away from the building, Lyra looked up at the sky once more. Stars were still there, shining brightly, just as they always had. But now, they didn't feel so far away. Now they felt like part of a new beginning, a beginning that they had fought for and finally found.